Monday, September 18th. I am Spencer Linton alongside a guy who is now reconsidering maybe his LA Rams fandom, Jerem Jordan.
How dare you? I can be individual fans of other guys. Puka Nacua, holy mackerel, 15 catches, most by an NFL rookie ever. Had 147 yards, which is incredible, on 20 targets. He is the first player in NFL history with 10 grabs and 100 yards in 2 games to start his career as a rookie. Like, what Puka is doing has exceeded our hopes and expectations for what he could do in the NFL.
Blowing them out of the water.
Destroying them. We thought he could be good. Is he already the best receiver in NFL history? Like, Austin has that distinction, but Puka's like 4 games away from us going, oh my gosh, he's better than Austin was in the NFL. And Austin Collie was a baller. So props to Puka. The Rams really gave the Niners a game. And remember, that's one of, if not the best defenses in the NFL. Fred Warner on that other side. So congrats to Puka. It's so fun to watch him ball out right now.
And he did so with a questionable status going into the game with an injured right oblique.
The only thing that's questionable is whether he's going to get 15 targets now, which is not questionable because it's happened 2 weeks in a row.
Historic performance by Puka Nacua. The big question that remains is, what will Puka's role be moved to once Cooper Kupp is back and available for the Rams and re-emerges as the clear #1 receiver? Cooper Kupp is an all-pro receiver.
Now they're stoked. They're like, we have a second guy.
But does that make things better for Puka Nacua? Because now the attention goes to Cooper Kupp? Or is Cooper Kupp just saying, sweet, yeah, focus on him. I'll go over here and do my thing?
It'll be good to have 2 guys. And what he's doing is unbelievable.
History. It is historic.
I'm not even looking at you because I'm looking at Boston's career game log real quick to see yards, what the most yards is. Okay, 171 and 163. So that was the 3rd most yards in a game by a BYU receiver in the NFL ever. Wow.
NFL trending.
Man, everybody knows his name.
Everybody knows Puka Nacua.
Everybody knows Puka Nacua.
And well deserved.
Chris Berman called him Puka Shell Nacua last night.
I saw him in a car dealership right before the season started.
Yeah.
And he said he was excited, felt like he was going to play a big role, you think. And his girlfriend was like, I told him to hold off on buying a car for now. Puka, go get the car.
Yeah. You can get multiple cars. Go ahead.
Go get the car. All rise and shout. It's time for What's Trending. What's Trending, presented by Feastbox, donating 10% of every order to Full of Hope, a charitable organization that feeds hungry families. And Jeremy, I got an aching for some bacon.
For some bacon, Lion King, I love it. That's one of my favorites.
You know,
let's go.
Woo Pig Coogie.
Nice. How was the food down there, by the way?
It was really good.
Yeah.
Bacon tastes delicious this Monday morning after a BYU victory.
Oh yeah, bacon always tastes delicious.
The Cougars somehow win that game 38-31.
Let's go, baby.
Unbelievable.
Got it done.
3-0 on the season. Jeremy, I'm still trying to figure out exactly how BYU won this game, going down 14-0 and being massively outgained by Arkansas.
Oh, my gosh.
It just doesn't make sense, statistically speaking.
No.
But they did it.
No.
Opportunity knocks. The Cougars were more than opportunistic. How'd they do it?
Big place.
Let me continue to eat this, by the way.
Please do so. I'll talk, you eat, and then I'll eat, and you talk. Okay, BYU made big plays. Let's talk about some of them. Down 14-0, BYU was in real trouble. Real trouble. On the road, SEC, 79,000 in the house. Good showing by the BYU fans, by the way. Amazing. Instead, BYU says, all right, let's just score 21 in a row.
Yeah.
Creativity and explosive plays, starting with Parker Kingston's 37-yard double pass. Here from Parker Kingston here.
Yeah, it actually got put in this week. We ran it every day, once or twice. We knew we were gonna call it. I just didn't know it was gonna be so early in the game to change momentum. And I knew Dion would be wide open because they weren't gonna expect it. And I just threw it out there, and I kind of lollipopped it there, but he got it and scored. So it was awesome.
How good of an athlete is Parker Kingston? His high school quarterback at Roy, before he went to Corner Canyon, was one Jackson Dart, Ole Miss starting quarterback. Who took over at quarterback for one Jackson Dart? It was Parker Kingston. The kid can throw. He had a 20-yard touchdown catch later as well, which was a great design. It was wide open, big convoy. Parker didn't even really need it. He would have raced in there. That was awesome. Then there's the one explosive running play, but it was a big one. L.J. Martin, 45 yards to the house.
In. Hand off LJ. LJ, second level. Mark Mitty gone. The 30, the 20, the 10, the touchdown! Touchdown Cougars! 45-yard touchdown run. LJ with the TD, and the Cougs are right back in it.
Cooked pig, Jim.
Yeah, eat some more. Okay, so BYU was sitting pretty. Then Arkansas scores 17 in a row. Okay, but BYU battled back and scored the next 17. Cougars actually made what's called a field goal during that.
I'm sorry, what?
It's worth 3 points. Although BYU tried to not score said field goal by faking again, unsuccessfully. But delay of game.
The greatest penalty in the history of BYU football's Big 12 era thus far.
So far.
That delay of game.
Then, the play of the year. It's going to be hard to beat this. Like, will we have a play beat this? I don't know.
To you, Chase.
Here's to you, Chase Roberts, one-hander.
I've always done these sideline catches where I try to keep my feet in, watching Austin Collie doing stuff like that, NFL receivers. And so it's kind of just become a habit of kind of knowing where I am on the field and then coming down with the ball, focusing on that, and then my feet feel like they're always in where they need to be.
And that's a life lesson. Be where your feet are, right? Chase, more bacon. Chase Roberts. What a play. Just, Spence, this is a new era of BYU football, obviously in the Big 12. This is not the WAC where things come easy without some resistance sometimes. Sure. There was resistance. BYU won this game on 281 yards on 57 plays.
Just like they planned it.
On 0.9 yards per carry, besides L.J. Martin's 45-yard rush, on 13 completions from Keaton Slovis. How did BYU do it? Big plays. We didn't even show a defensive play, which I want to get to in a second.
For sure.
And talk about. But the resilience and the big playability of BYU to overcome adversity and just win, baby, just figure it out, was incredible. Incredible.
Yeah. I mean, I don't even know where to begin, but I guess I'll start.
Begin with bacon.
Yeah. That's always an answer, okay? BYU, and I've said it before, ultra opportunistic. Mm-hmm. They took major advantage of field position game in the first half.
Yeah.
Arkansas shanked a couple of punts badly.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yep.
And I don't want to overlook the fact that Parker Kingston had a 47-yard kickoff return as well to set up BYU's first touchdown, which he threw to Deion Smith. Like, Chase Roberts is going to take, like, the wow factor from this game.
Yep.
Parker Kingston was 100% the Y factor in this game.
He did more than Keanu Hill and Cody Epps have done to this point, which is surprising.
Converting critical third downs on the go-ahead touchdown drive, okay, where the guy's ripping his jersey. He gets that critical first down.
Well, it's like his undershirt was just held onto, right?
Okay, so
too fast.
Hey, he got that first down.
Yep.
Again, we're going to point to him throwing the touchdown to Deion Smith, which was very nice. But, yeah, his kickoff return as well. He made so many big plays for BYU in this game. Parker Kingston, and joins Jim McManus, the only former BYU Roy connection quarterback to throw a touchdown for the Cougars.
Wow, man, they'll get you.
Okay, so, yes, opportunistic. BYU took advantage of the field position battle in the first half by capitalizing on big plays. In the third quarter, to me, where the game absolutely changed was when we thought Arkansas got a first down on a 3rd and long, and the officials reviewed it. They decided he was 1 yard short at midfield. Sam Pittman and Arkansas decided to go for it. They're up 10. They've got the momentum. They got the ball. And A.J. Bunkpachon makes a huge tackle. Great push by the defensive line.
Watch Jackson Cravens here, 91.
Jackson Cravens deserves
that
massive credit right there.
He doesn't get the tackle, but watch the running back. Was it A.J. Green? He had to shift where he was going.
AJV,
and then
right there.
Max Tooley supports
cleaning it up.
In the hole.
Yes.
Beautiful.
So good.
Beautiful.
Okay? So right there, game changes. BYU able to kick the field goal that you already referenced after that. And then it just kind of felt like BYU had some life,
Still in it.
Reinstigated into that sideline.
Yep.
The quick strike mentality continues. The turnover happens after that. KJ Jefferson, I don't know what he was looking at. He clearly didn't see Max Tooley. Interception, the next play, Parker Kingston.
Boom.
With his first touchdown catch as a BYU Cougar. Okay? We didn't even mention that play. Oh, yeah, he scored as well.
9th player to throw and receive a touchdown in a game for BYU.
And at that point, I thought to myself, BYU's going to win this game. Their Arkansas and their fans and the stadium is silent. They're freaking out right now. Cougars have all the momentum, and that four-man push in the fourth quarter up front. We haven't seen it, Jeremy.
We have waited years to see this.
That was an incredible four-man pass rush.
Yes, Tyler Batty was so good. Eddie Heckard on a corner blitz. Jay Hill, baby. Jay Hill sends Eddie Heckard, punches the ball out. Tyler Batty recovers, and BYU, ends up scoring on that. BYU got pressure with 4. And then shout out to Brady Latham, who really tried to help BYU win this game. One of the Razorback offensive linemen. False start, number 62. False start, number 62. Holding, number 62. Oh. He had 3 fourth-quarter penalties, 2 on that final drive. Did get a question from someone about why wasn't this a runoff? Because on one of them there was an incompletion. If the clock has already stopped, it's not a runoff.
Right.
It's only if it would be running.
And a good question.
Like if there was a catch inbounds, then it would have happened.
So I was talking to some Arkansas fans in the airport when I was flying before I flew home yesterday, and they're pointing to 14 penalties and 125 yards, and Arkansas
certainly helped.
Just self-destructed.
Certainly helped.
But I want to be fair to BYU in this regard because BYU's pressure induced some of these jumpy penalties.
And the holding.
Yes.
Blake Mangelson, by the way.
Pressure.
Blake Mangelson has been perhaps the most underrated piece of the defense so far. Tyler Batty and what he does. He got 1.5 sacks and a fumble recovery and a forced fumble in this game. He was awesome. Blake Mangelson, the Mangler, is doing a great job. BYU's backers playing tremendous. BYU safeties and the inexperience have not been a liability at all. BYU's been good on defense because you go, 31 allowed. Well, is it? It's 24. And then even then there was a short field, right, on a turnover from Chase, so it was more like 21 points allowed.
Well, you give up a punt return,
the defense.
A punt return, and you give up a short field after the fumble.
I think it's 21 from the defense. If you had told me last week, hey, 21 allowed by the defense.
That's a winning number.
That's a win. That's a winning number. BYU did not have winning. Okay, another winning number. Starting average field position. Let's quantify it. Greg has tweeted a lot about this before, right? When BYU has the advantage in starting field position, they win a ton of games. BYU was plus 9 yards. Big-time stuff from the defense, pinning them back, Rico, punting. It was awesome. And then the fact that BYU was able to score so many points on so few yards is our stat of the day.
It's the BYU Sports Nation stat of the day.
Courtesy of the homies at Cougar Stats. 38 points on 281 is the BYU's not scored 38 on 281 this century. That many points, that few yards. Oh my gosh. Again, few plays. Last week, Aaron Roderick said, hey, we scored 41 on 55 plays. This week it's 38 on 57. BYU's ability to get into the end zone in spite of minimal rushing attack. And if I told you before the season, hey, at Arkansas, Aiden Robbins won't even have a carry. Cody Epps will not even have a target. And Keanu Hill will not even have a target at Arkansas. What happens? And I'd be like, you lose 50 to nothing?
Gosh.
What? Not that extreme, but the way that BYU, again, this is a new era. Just figure it out. And BYU did and got a awesome road win. And now the expectations kind of changed because this, to me, at Texas felt like a game that, especially after the Alabama game, was like, okay, that's most predictable loss. At Arkansas, second most predictable loss. This BYU team's figuring some things out. And they are very flawed, but 3-0. That's probably my favorite part of this. The BYU still has space to get way better. And they get challenged in league now against Kansas on Saturday. The Big 12 opener.
The Big 12 era begins in Lawrence against a Kansas team that is receiving votes just like BYU. Kansas 6 spots out, BYU 10 spots out. The Jayhawks a 7-point favorite. I have questions about Kansas's defense, which hopefully bodes well for BYU's offense, which has had some certain struggles. But to your point, they're 3-0. They've figured out a way to just make the most of the opportunities. So BYU scores on 6 of those 57 plays. Okay, they run 57 plays. 6 of them are scoring plays. That's better than 10. That's better than 10%.
And they were all from, like, distance, right?
1 out of every 10 plays was a scoring play for BYU.
And those scoring plays are not, like, 1-yard runs either for BYU. It's a 37,
plays.
a 45, the 1-yard. You know, there's an LJ there, 1 yard.
A 43-yard field goal.
There's a 20-yard from Parker, the 7-yard from Chase. BYU's ability to continue to be efficient and explosive. Only 13 completions, but got it done, man. I'm just, again, new era. It's not going to look and feel like it used to because these opponents are tougher. But if BYU wins, that's all that matters.
How about that turnover stat? Once again, Sam Pittman.
Yep.
When they were up a turnover, they were in control of the game, Jerem.
Of course.
And
that
then
works typically.
The 4th down stop doesn't count as a turnover, but it kind of
It's a turnover
feels
and
that
downs,
way,
for sure.
right?
Yeah.
And then when Max Tooley got the interception, bang, you're even. And it's funny how that works. But Sam Pittman now 7-18 when losing the turnover battle as the Arkansas
Or
head
even.
coach. Even.
Just even.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Positive, undefeated. Yeah.
By the way, he had not lost a night game at Arkansas. Now he has.
Night game BYU.
Now he has.
Night game BYU is like Georgia.
They did it again. Should we have ever doubted?
No.
Should we have ever doubted BYU's playing late?
Unfortunately, BYU's
win.
game's at 1:30 this week.
Oh, yeah, and BYU's won 7 games in a row overall. They have one of the longest win streaks in the country.
It is the longest in the Big 12 by far.
The improbability of all of this, given the start of that game, is just wildly entertaining.
Give me some bacon.
Yes, eat up while I get to the Monday mailbag, where you ask questions, and I'm sure you have plenty, and we answer them on the show. Porter Larson asks on Facebook, does this win change the expectations of what BYU can do over the course of the season?
Yes, let's talk about it tomorrow.
Yeah, and we will at length.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm feeling a lot better about my 7 wins. I can tell you that much.
Yeah, no, I'm up to 7. That's
tell you, it's feeling really good.
I'm
about
up to
that.
7 plus.
Parker Esplin on Instagram says, "I'm worried about our receivers.
Okay,
Epps and Hill not doing anything worries me, and BYU's other receivers struggle to get open. Keelan Marion got open. Parker Kingston got open. Chase Roberts made an unbelievable catch. Okay,
yeah.
He continues. Yeah. Since most of BYU's big plays came off trick plays, well, was it trick play? It was one trick play, right? Or, like." There was.
Is it a trick to make a one-handed catch?
Misdirection, but only one trick play.
One trick play.
And short passes, he adds.
Sure.
Is that a worry going forward?
No, it doesn't matter if it's a short pass and you get an explosive playoff. It's okay.
You blocked extremely well, which BYU did.
Yeah. No, it's about how many yards you get, not air yards.
You got Kingsley out there throwing a block, and then Isaac Rex laying a pancake on the Parker Kingston touchdown.
I get the concern because it's like, hey, it's not the guys that I knew from last year. Darius Lassiter last week, Keelan Marion this week.
Oh, how about
Parker
the dime?
Kingston.
The dime that Keaton slows through to Keelan Marion on the game-winning touchdown drive.
Fantastic. That was huge. 38 yards or something. That was amazing. By the way, I was calling a different game, so I didn't watch the game live. I watched it in the booth where I was on my laptop, cheering to an empty America First field in San Diego. Everyone had gone. It's just the guys cleaning the stands and me going, yeah, in the booth.
I love it. Hashtag BYUSN on X, Facebook, and Instagram to join the conversation. Send in your Monday mailbag questions.
Yep.
No, we're not worried going forward that Epps and Hill were not involved there. And
if anything, be excited that BYU won without
other
them,
guys.
Essentially.
Yes, finding ways to win.
They contributed in non-catch space, right? They were blocking on plays. They were running the routes. Someone else gets open.
Helps that Isaac Rex is doing his thing, too.
Isaac Rex emerged. Let's go. What do they call him? T-Rex? Coordinator's Corner, live on the BYUtv app, coming up at noon Eastern Time. Excited to hear from Kelly Paping on special teams. Jay Hill, what a defensive performance from his group as well, coming up today, 2 Eastern on the BYUtv app.
Up next, time for another Matich Monday. What impressed Trevor most about the cooking of the pigs in Fayetteville? Bacon! This is BYU Sports Nation.
Read some more here.
Yep.
BYU Sports Nation is sponsored by Feastbox Global Grill, a unique dining experience featuring Texas, Hawaiian, and Korean meats. Time to feast.
If you're looking to build your brand awareness and increase market share as BYU moves into the Big 12, this is the place, BYU Athletics. We can provide the tools you need to make sure your company is seen and heard. BYU Athletics is where you can align your products and services with loyal fans that cheer for our Cougars. And they can also help your business win. Learn more about what a partnership with BYU Athletics and your company will look like. After all, this is the place. Email sponsorship at BYU.edu today.
Everyone loves going to the dentist, right? When was the last time you had your teeth cleaned? Heart disease, Alzheimer's, stroke, dementia, and other inflammatory health conditions can be linked to periodontitis, a severe stage of gum disease. To help fight against gum disease, have your teeth cleaned regularly by a dentist or hygienist. To review the science behind these findings, go to visityourdentist.org. Dental cleanings are essential for your health. This message is brought to you by the eAssist Dental Health Education Foundation.
Seasons, 6 bowl appearances, 4 bowl wins, 2 top 25 finishes. BYU's head coach, Kalani Sitake, the heart of Cougar Nation. Join the studio audience for BYU football with Kalani Sitake, Tuesdays at 6:30 during the season at BYU Broadcasting. Get a chance to post questions or catch a post-show selfie with Coach. Sign up to attend at BYUSN.com. Now's your chance to feel the pulse of BYU football with Kalani Sitake.
We never count ourselves out.
Dropped in his tracks by Eddie Heckard. And a catch made! Isaac Rex!
We are live at Studio B with your day-to-day BYU Sports play-by-play. Happy Monday. I'm Spencer Linton alongside Jerem Jordan. If you're new to the program, welcome. You may not know that every Monday we have the distinct pleasure of welcoming one of the greatest college football analysts in all the land. From ESPN, he is a BYU national champion, Trevor Matich, back on the show for another Matich Monday. And Trevor, I'm just looking at the statistics alone from this BYU at Arkansas game. Improbable, unbelievable, probably doesn't begin to explain how the Cougars won this game. But in your opinion, how did BYU pull this thing off in Fayetteville?
It seems like a minor miracle, doesn't it? But like most miracles, it had to do a lot with what BYU did. I mean, you talk about statistics. Arkansas had 424 total yards, BYU 281. You just look at that and you would think that they would have been run out of the building out there. But what they ended up doing was, after weathering that initial storm where Arkansas went up 14-0, BYU played relatively cleanly and they forced a lot of mistakes. And that was the big difference in this game. Penalties, turnovers, mistakes, missed assignments, and sacks.
So many big plays for BYU in this one. And down 14-0, certainly it could have been tough to come back. It's a 14-0 run. It's a BYU 17-0 run. It's an Arkansas 17-0 run. It's a BYU 17-0 run. It was an incredible swing there. What was the biggest play in the game to you?
To me, the biggest play was the trick play touchdown, where, you know, they threw a double pass off to the right, then touchdown pass to the running back going up the opposite sideline. The reason is that kind of kickstarted BYU's belief, and that stopped Arkansas's momentum. And the thing is, a lot of people think that if you have to do a trick play like that, maybe nothing else is working. Well, there's another way to look at that. Trick plays like that don't work unless the defense is overloading something. I don't want to say the word cheating, but unless they're unsound with their assignments. That's why those kinds of plays worked. So not only did it stop their momentum, start momentum for BYU, it also forced Arkansas to cover the entire field. And so I thought that play was the spark that got the whole thing going.
ESPN's Trevor Matich on BYU Sports Nation. Trevor, what did this specific win teach you about this BYU football team in 2023?
Resilience and belief. I mean, there was no reason for Arkansas to not run BYU out of the building with the way they started. Start out with a lead. They've got the momentum. They seem to be the more physical team, and BYU wasn't going to have it. And that's what this showed me, because the Cougars started making plays. And it's not that they were consistently awesome all the way through. They weren't. But when it came time to make big plays, BYU made them. If you just look at the defense, for example, Arkansas moved the ball kind of at will. But in key moments, they got pressure on the quarterback. They sacked the quarterback with the defensive line a lot of times. And on defense, when Arkansas kept on getting first down after first down, most of those weren't third down conversions. most of those were bigger plays on first or second down, because when it came to third down, they only converted 2 of 13 third down opportunities. That means that BYU defense, when Arkansas was moving the ball, when they had the opportunity to get them off the field on third down, they did every time except for 2. And so those kinds of things, rising up to the moment and making the play in the moment when they weren't dominating really anything else, is what this BYU team kind of identified itself as here. Now, they want to dominate everywhere else, and they got better this week than they were in the first 2 weeks. But I learned that this team is resilient, and then when it's time to make a play, they make the play.
Certainly winning at Arkansas may not have been in the cards for everybody, myself included. This is an upset win. This is a bonus win on the schedule. BYU ahead of expectation, at least for me, and it seems like a lot of Cougar fans. So does this affect how you feel BYU can perform this season? Is the expectation higher now for the Cougars?
No, my expectation is still the same. You know, if they get to a bowl game, it'll be a terrific year. If they win 7 games, even 8, it'll be still a terrific year, because the schedule all of a sudden gets pretty tough. But at the same time, you see BYU rising. Each week they're getting a little better. And if they continue to do that and get to the point to where they're really maximizing their capability, there's no reason to think BYU couldn't achieve a lot more than most people expected coming into the season. And so right now I'm thinking, okay, I still need to see certain things get better in order for them to be able to compete at the mid to higher levels of the Big 12. But you see those things starting to gel in certain ways. So I want to see those continue to gel.
Now, Trevor, you mentioned the Big 12 at the bottom doesn't look as maybe tough as we thought it was when the season began. Iowa State is frankly in shambles. We're not sure about West Virginia still. Oklahoma State just got blown out by South Alabama 33-7. So where do you see BYU right now? If you were to put the Big 12 power rankings together of all 14 teams, where would you put BYU at this juncture?
This juncture, I'd put them probably right below Texas Tech.
Okay.
Is about where I'd put them, maybe TCU. So I would put them right kind of in the middle of the Big 12 with a chance to rise a little bit. You know, this opener against Kansas will tell them a lot, because Kansas is one of the better teams in the Big 12. I don't consider them up there with the Texas and Oklahoma in that group, but they're very, very good. But you're right, the Big 12 really struggled this last week, and if it's not an overreaction to say that those teams are going to continue to struggle, then when you look at teams like Texas Tech that has a phenomenal offense and can keep up with scoring with pretty much anybody, and you look at TCU, who the impression that people have is that lost to Colorado, but the truth of it is this TCU's team is really good. I mean, they lost a lot of guys to the NFL off of last year's team that made the national championship game, but in the transfer portal, they restocked pretty well. They just didn't come together very well in the game that everybody was watching, that Colorado game. So I think that TCU is a tough team as well. But see, BYU is now kind of rising up into the realm of that level of teams with the ability to really belong there. And in order to do it, there's a couple things that need to happen. First and foremost, the offensive line needs to continue to get better. The offensive line showed some signs of improvement against Arkansas. And if they continue to grow, then that's the most important thing for this team. And then also the chemistry between quarterback and receiver. Keaton Slovis made some fantastic plays. Receiver made some fantastic catches, but it was still just a 52% completion rate. And when you can't run the ball, you need to complete a lot more than that. So these are things that BYU needs to improve in order to reach some of these goals.
Yeah, the way BYU won was not super clean or pretty, but welcome to the era of Power 5 football. You just have to win the game. Each week's going to be, this is not the WAC in the Mountain West where sometimes BYU's putting up 50 and just blowing out fools. I don't know that we're going to see that very often. The way that BYU won was impressive. You brought up some of those numbers. I want to talk about the run game because we've talked about it the last couple of weeks. 45-yard touchdown run by L.J. Martin. Amazing. Outside of that, 30 carries for 32 yards. So the run game, still trying to figure it out. But, hey, BYU won. I'd rather be talking about this in a win than a loss, Trevor.
Right. Now, and talking about it that way is good. I think BYU deserves the credit for good things that they did. But also, I think as a fan, it's important to understand the totality of what happened in this game. Arkansas had 14 penalties for 125 yards. They had 2 turnovers. BYU only had 1. And in key moments, Arkansas didn't make the play, BYU did. Arkansas's offensive line is a shambles, to use a word that you used a couple of minutes ago. And they've been trying to rotate guys in to figure out who can play offensive line for them. And that showed up because BYU, in important moments, dominated their offensive line, forced a lot of penalties from that offensive line, got sacks against that offensive line. But when they face a really good offensive line, they're going to need more from the offense. And so, yes, this is a great win. And in this era of Power 5 football, survive and advance. You don't need to impress people by blowing people out. Just win the game, right? But in order to be able to win consistently, you need to have something to hang your hat on. And if you look at the offense, BYU right now, you could say what they have to hang their hat on is an occasional phenomenal catch, because that's what they had. Isaac Rex would have had the catch of the game had it not been for Chase Roberts having a catch for a touchdown that ended up #1 on ESPN's top 10 list. I mean, it was phenomenal. But other than that, there wasn't much consistency. And so I'm really happy with this win. Survive and advance, get the victory, but you've got to have something to hang your hat on when things are going poorly. And so, this is where they need to improve on some of these things.
Now, Trevor, before we get to a question about one specific Cougar in the NFL, Puka Nacua, we do need to ask you your opinion on how BYU matches up with Kansas. Where would the Cougars have an advantage against the Jayhawks in their Big 12 opener?
I think BYU would have an advantage in the same way that they had an advantage over Arkansas. They would have to have that advantage in discipline and playing mistake-free.
Okay.
Because the offense for Kansas is legit. Their quarterback, Jalen Daniels, is a kind of a dark horse Heisman candidate, a dual threat who's one of the best dual threat quarterbacks in the country. The offensive scheme that they run is extraordinarily difficult to prepare for because they use all kinds of different options and deceptions that give people fits. Their defense right now is, I believe, second. It's one of the best in the Big 12 at fewest yards allowed per game. And some of that can be skewed by your initial opponents. But at the same time, the defense of Kansas is experienced, and they've got a lot of talent there. So this is a game that BYU will need to go on the road, and they'll need to win with discipline, and they'll need to win with execution. Because from a talent standpoint, it's hard to see on that Kansas team a place where you can say, yeah, we're going to go get them right there. We can overrun them right there. Kansas is pretty good.
When you look at what Puka Nacua did, it's amazing. We thought he'd be good and he'd have a shot. We didn't think he'd be #1 in the NFL in catches through 2 games and #2 in yards. 15 for 147 yesterday. He's really playing the Cooper Kupp role and taking it very seriously.
He is, and he's doing it in such a physical way. I mean, he'll catch the ball down the field, but he catches a lot of passes at or near the line of scrimmage, and the defense will swarm him, hit him, and he'll drive through like a running back and get yards after the catch. So he got beat up a little bit in this game against the 49ers. They are one of the best and most physical defenses in the NFL. But what impresses me is that in the first game, they weren't sure. The defense wasn't sure where the Rams would go with Cooper Kupp out. And it was Puka Nacua. And Tutu Atwell, et cetera. But Puka was really the focal point. So here come the 49ers, and they're able to game plan for him now. And they're swarming Puka. And Puka is just physically driving through those tackles. So you can get a lot of catches, but not a lot of yards. He's got both.
Trevor Matich of ESPN with us on BYU Sports Nation for another loaded Matich Monday. Trevor, we appreciate the insight. Here's to BYU going 1-0 in Big 12 play. Fingers crossed for that.
I hear you there. Thanks, guys.
Trevor is always bringing it on BYU Sports Nation. And
yeah,
he's starting to see some things that would encourage him on the offensive line. And I think that we all weren't sure what the heck was going to happen against Arkansas with the run game. At least BYU found an explosive play for a touchdown.
Got one. The rest of it wasn't good.
Sure.
But again, this is a new era. This is not the WAC where BYU's playing New Mexico and Wyoming every other week. BYU's not going to BYU put up 38 points on so few plays, 57. What? Just crazy good explosion,
efficiency,
and make it happen when you need it.
Yes.
BYU converted on 3rd down and long, created turnovers on defense. Awesome. And after further review is going to break all of that down. Dave, Blaine, David will break down the X's and O's of the big win at Arkansas. The one-hander by Chase Roberts. What a play. tomorrow, 7 Eastern on the BYUtv app.
Where does that Chase Roberts touchdown catch rank among all-time great BYU plays?
I got a super specific number.
Top 50?
I'm ready to go.
Top 25? Better than that?
Oh, now wait a minute.
This is BYU Sports Nation.
It was awesome, but wait a minute.
BYU Sports Nation is presented by the BYU Store, official outfitter of BYU fans everywhere.
Cougar Feast is the official feast of BYU Athletics. Pre-cooked meats, sides, and appetizers delivered to your door. Simply reheat and feast. 10% of all proceeds are donated to Full of Hope, a charity passionate about feeding hungry families in need.
On game day.
On game day.
On game day.
On game day. Feast like a Cougar.
Go to CougarFeast.com to feast like a Cougar this football season.
Welcome to a partnership where customer experience comes first. It's our focus. It's your expectation. We provide support to those that go the extra mile for all of us. Supplying products, training, and service for generations. Learn more at BradyIndustries.com.
Lizzie from the Food Nanny. I recently got a My Style checking account. It's the perfect blend of rewards and convenient benefits. I love that sound. And now My Style checking has new features like mobile phone protection, 24/7 telehealth, and my favorite, restaurant discounts. Get the only checking account you truly need and see what's new with My Style at macu.com.
This portion of BYU Sports Nation is presented by BYU Food to Go, the MVP of your next event.
Follow BYU Sports Nation on social media. We're on Facebook, X, Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok.
Welcome back to Studio B. I am Spencer. He is Jerem. Let's roll out your Monday headlines. Presented by BYU Food to Go, the MVP of your next event.
BYU football beats Arkansas in a back-and-forth thriller, 38-31 after trailing 14-0, 4.5 minutes into the game. BYU stormed back, took the lead with 8 minutes left in the fourth on this incredible catch from Chase Roberts.
Woo. To his right, back to his left. Keaton deep drop. Keaton throws, end zone. Caught for the touchdown. He came down with it. He came down with it. Chase Roberts with the score. Leaping high in the air to haul it in and give the Cougars the lead. Chase Roberts flashing to the back left of the end zone, a one-handed haul in. Wow.
LJ Martin, he was like, couldn't believe it. He was like, what? We were all LJ Martin in that moment. It was awesome.
Indeed,
How was it on the sideline?
Indeed. In fact, I'm going to put out a video on social media later today that was taken by one of our corporate sponsors that shows the sideline. He happened to be recording at that moment.
And why isn't it out yet? Let's go.
I
want to see it. Keaton Slava, 13 of 25. Not huge numbers. 167, 2 touchdowns. Got it done, though. LJ Martin, 88 yards on the ground, 2 touchdowns. Defense forced 4 sacks, 2 turnovers to help pull off the win. The Cougars play at Kansas Saturday afternoon on ESPN.
On to Cougars in the NFL, led by Puka Nacua. Historic performance, 15 catches, 147 yards receiving for the Rams, and a hard-fought loss to a good 49ers team led by Fred Warner's defense. Nacua, if you missed it earlier, broke the NFL single-game record for receptions by a rookie with those 15 and set an NFL record with 25 catches in the first 2 games of his career, going over 100 yards in each of those 2 games. Warner had 11 tackles, a sack, a tackle for loss, and a pass breakup in the win. You know, typical Fred. Zach Wilson against a good Cowboys team, 12 for 27, passing 170 yards, 1 touchdown, 3 interceptions, and was the Jets' leading rusher. Yikes, with 36 yards on 5 attempts and a 30-10 loss at Jerry's World.
Tyler Algier, 16 carries, 48 yards, and a Falcons win over the Packers. Jordan Love, Utah State. Michael Davis, 3 tackles, tackle for loss, and Chargers lost to the Titans in OT. And tonight, double header Monday Night Football. Taysom Hill, Jamal Williams, and the Saints play the Panthers. Sione Takitaki and the Browns play the Steelers. Tonight, let's go, baby.
Doubleheader football on a Monday, I will take it. #1 ranked BYU women's soccer. I can't believe this.
What happened?
Absolutely stunned by Utah State in Logan on Saturday. The first loss of the season for the top-ranked Cougars. Back into Big 12 play, road contest at Baylor on Thursday. I still can't believe this happened.
Of all the teams to lose to, number 12 women's volleyball swept both Utah Valley Friday, Utah State Saturday, both on the road. In Logan, the Cougars set a rally era record for most aces, 9 without an error from the service line.
That's amazing.
Cougars host top 25 opponent Houston Wednesday to open Big 12 play.
BYU men's golf opening their season at the Bearcat Invitational in Cincinnati, Ohio at Coldstream Country Club today and tomorrow. Oh yeah, men's golf in Big 12 country as well.
Women's golf at the Leadership and Golf Invitational at Chambers Bay and University Place in Washington today and tomorrow. Future Big 10 golf, of course.
Yeah, it's so weird. On to the PGA Tour, Zach Blair finished tied for 52nd at the Fortinet Championship after a strong round 1 performance. Picked up a paycheck of over 20 grand for making the cut. Well done, Zach. Those are today's headlines. Now we opine in the whip. The Cougar Whip Round presented by Maersk, your e-commerce logistics shipping partner.
Chase Roberts' TD catch was the top play on SportsCenter's top 10. So where does this catch rank in BYU's all-time plays?
Oh my gosh. For sure, this is a top 50 play. I'd probably put it somewhere between 30 and 40, Jerem. I mean, there are some amazing plays. That show that we put together was awesome.
So fun.
As good as that catch was.
Top 100.
Top, probably between 30 and 40. Where do you have it?
I specifically have it at number 46.
Oh, 46.
I have it just out of Cody Hoffman's 2013 Georgia Tech touchdown catch.
Okay, where he caught the back end of the football?
Yes. SEC, game winner, fourth quarter, one-hander. Yeah. I have a hard time putting it too high because once you get real high, you get all kinds of like winners in a huge game, which this is as well. But yeah, when you break it down, it's tough to beat like Ethan Pochman winning the WAC title in '96 in OT.
Fair point. Fair point.
And Harleen over Weddle juggling '06 Utah. It was amazing, but it wasn't Utah. And breaking that streak. Blah blah blah. There are some great plays in BYU history. Chase Roberts cracks the top 50, though.
Baby.
If we did that show today, I would argue that's in the top 50 as well.
Okay, so with that top 50 all-time play in mind, does Chase Roberts deserve a statue for that catch?
Give people the context here.
Yeah, so King Hussein, who is a huge BYU athletic supporter and was the man behind the indoor practice facility, he travels with the team. He's an amazing human being. Now, he joked after the game in the locker room when the team was celebrating that he's going to make a statue embodying Chase's body position when he made that touchdown catch.
Yeah.
Tyler Batty came out and said, I think there's going to be a statue.
I wish, honestly, that we had the quarterback factory statues outside the stadium. I just think that'd be a cool picture, cool kind of spot. Obviously, Lavelle deserves one. Around here, statues aren't a big deal. I'm not sure if it's like a graven images thing or whatnot.
I don't know.
With the church and whatnot. So, no.
He doesn't.
But it was a great